Okay, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. And is that just me? There's nobody on there since it's just me on the screen? Awesome.
There's
I'm
still time.
really tech savvy, as you've learned quite well. Yeah,
Super tech.
super tech savvy.
Yeah. So if you need anything, just come over here and yell through this like
Help!
open floor.
Garrett, what do you need? Thanks, guys.
My client, I gave her a recommendation of a mortgage broker, and instead of going to that, she went to her friend who gave her another mortgage broker, and that mortgage broker told her there's no chance she'd get a loan. And I was like, like that word. So she called me, and I'm like, okay, I'll give you another number.
Yeah.
Your number. Then who's gonna call you?
Yeah.
I've never heard that said that way to someone.
Yeah.
Usually there's like cultivation love. Like we do this, and then we'll get you a better deal.
I mean, some people just aren't going to get loans. It's true.
Yeah,
But usually it's set a little more tactfully.
exactly.
Interesting.
I'm just glad it wasn't my recommendation.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. Just so there's a bit more of the board on there. Morning. How are you?
Doing well, how are you?
Doing well.
Tyler.
Garrett. Yeah, I think we met
First day?
a little while ago. I taught a class a couple weeks ago. I have more facial hair though.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah. It looks a little different.
Okay.
What class was that? It was lead gen, I want to say.
Okay, yeah.
We talked about social media. It was not marketing, but prospecting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did have a beard.
I did.
Yeah, I got rid of that. Huh?
Got rid of that.
Nice.
You like the other way
It's
around.
getting cold. It's like it's time to get
You
'em.
like no shave November, right?
Yeah, I'm not there yet. But
I did no shave October through January last year.
yeah,
That was brutal.
I did
You
no
were
shave
like
like August through
half the world.
January last year.
Yeah, I was getting my license and like just whatever, not doing anything too professional. I was just let it grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the most clean shaven I've been in 2+ years.
Okay.
I usually have some sort of stupid facial hair.
Yeah.
But
I was just telling my little brother, my little brother's a freshman in college, and he's like, wants to grow a beard so bad. Wants to, he barely has a little chin fuzz and like barely grows a little mustache. And I was like, man, do not. It's like, don't worry about it. It's like, that's all I wanted was grow a beard. And then the minute I started growing a beard, it's like, no, I wish I didn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to shave every day.
yeah.
Is that what you're looking like?
7, all right. A few more minutes. Kids got a little watch for the second time. So how have the trainings been so far? You guys found them useful, helpful? Have they been kind of lackluster in content?
Well, they've been pretty good, I think.
Yeah. What do you wish there was more of and less of in the trainings?
Seems like it's kind of cut short, isn't it?
Like in the timeline or
Timeline.
content wise?
Not like time wise, well, content, like everyone is like kind of knows what they're doing.
Okay.
The amount of time is what it is.
Yeah, it may be. Do you like feel like people are rushing through it and not giving enough time for discussion, or what does that look like?
No, it just seems like sometimes they just skip over a lot of what's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that the hard part about this is everybody's gonna put their own spin on everything. And so some people will say, I don't think this really matters, I don't think that's important. So like today is a ton of like breakouts, like you guys sit and discuss this, you guys talk about that, role play this, and we'll kind of play it by ear based on how many people are in here, how many people are on Zoom, because if you're on Zoom, and you guys are doing role play, like, it's not easy to Zoom and role play, so we might skip through some of that. But I think it just kind of depends, you know, you get agents that are like, oh, I never do that, so I'm not gonna teach it, which maybe is the best service, so, I don't know. Yeah, but I feel like I'm skipping over anything today, because I will skip around a little bit. But if you have questions or concerns, and you feel like I'm skipping around, please let me know.
I would have one people call and the person 11 was able to create breakout rooms for all the call people.
For all the what people?
For all the people on Zoom.
Yeah.
They were put into like
In the
a
breakout
room,
rooms. and all that.
and they give the whatever weekend the playing copy, and then the leaders call for the call back.
I'll be honest, I do not know how to do
I
that.
don't know.
Yeah. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. We'll do introductions here in a minute. Sorry, everybody on Zoom, not doing introductions for you. Introductions in office only. But I will start, just tell a little bit about myself. All three of you are in one of my other classes, but my name is Garrett. I run the Bring Home Denver team with my business partner, Luke, and been in business here in Keller Williams downtown since 2013. The last 3 years, I think we're #1 team in the office. We are getting bypassed this year by Elevate Avenue, and they're crushing it, which is awesome to see. But yeah, I was telling the group earlier, I think that outside of just the like physical mechanics of how to do your job, the like, here's how you write a contract, here's how you show houses, here's how you do an open house. I think this class is probably the best one to take. I feel that negotiation is such a big piece of what we do and in everyday life, and that if you don't negotiate well or you don't understand that, you're at a disservice and you're already losing. And so we'll talk a lot about that today. But we'll everybody just go around and give me your name and why you got into real estate. Do you want to start?
Do you want to stand up?
I don't care.
Does it matter?
You can go ahead and stand. Whatever you want.
My name is Savannah Regan. I'm brand new to Keller Williams. I got into real estate mostly because I am a very independent person and I like to make things my way. So I think real estate kind of gives me that freedom, and it allows me to help people and do it how I want to do it.
And are you new to real estate or just doing keto?
I got my license in May, and I was at Engel and Volkers, but I'm still pretty new, obviously. So yeah,
Awesome. Well, welcome.
thank you.
I got my license in July, so I'm in walk show, and I've been here since August. Why I get into real estate? I think people have been telling me forever that I should do it. I'm really good at the hunt for things, and I'm pretty meticulous about like how things run and being planned and backup plans, and contingencies. I love all things home, from like finding the home, being in the home, and then helping people make it a home. So it seems like a really good fit.
Awesome. Well, you like this class? There's a big section on the plan.
Yeah, I like planning.
Yeah. Awesome.
My name is Carlos. I've been here, maybe just under a month, maybe. I've always been around real estate. A lot of people in my life had, mortgage industry or other realtors as well. I figured it was just probably just getting creative to give me the flexibility that I want and the ability to make as much money as I want as well. So,
Yeah, absolutely. The money is real. The freedom is real. You'll find that the freedom is probably not the kind of freedom that you expected, especially if you want to make the money that you want. I think a lot of people get into real estate thinking that it's all just freedom and I'll work when I want and blah, blah, blah. But then you find that if you want to make money, it's a lot more structured than it is free, just like any other job.
I'm Tyler. Same, been here about a month. I got into real estate. I enjoy providing that service, providing somewhere for somebody to live. Yeah, I mean, you have a crappy day, the first place you want to be is home.
Yes.
Have a good day, the first place you want to be is home. So
Yeah.
providing that services is really important.
Awesome. All right, can you guys on Zoom hear me, or would it be better if I zoomed in on my computer for the audio?
We can hear you, but it seems to be a lot of feedback.
Okay, let me see if I can mute myself on that one and log in on this one. Give me 1 second. All right, let me mute this one. Okay, is that better for you? Oh, that's gonna, gotta turn that one down.
That is better.
Okay, now can you hear me better?
That's much better.
Here. All right. Will somebody say something really quick just so I can hear you on this and make sure?
Anybody?
Yeah, I can hear you a little bit. All right. Let me switch this over. Go back to here. All right, so awesome. Thanks for your patience. So let's first just talk about your guys' ideas of what is negotiation and why is it important? Say that again. To get the best deal? Okay. Tell me more about that. How do you get the best deal?
To get the buyer on the contract. Because you have to talk to the agent and see what offers they have and figure out what they want. So it's a bit of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think talking to the agent's a big part of that, to figure out what's going to be the best offer. What else? Sorry, 1 second. Okay. What is negotiation, you guys? Is it just weaseling your way in? Is it pestering the other person? Is it, what does that mean?
Back and forth conversations, trying to come to a mutual agreement. Kind of where you can both benefit and both come to final opinion, I guess.
Mhm.
No matter what it is, sales,
Yeah.
negotiate.
So back and forth. I'm hearing that's key. I would agree. Compromise. Yeah. Does it have to be compromise or is it always compromise? Should it always be compromise? No? Okay.
And one person do a compromise. A benefit to them.
Yeah. I think that's one thing about negotiation is it's all subjective. You know what? When I feel like I'm compromising, sometimes the other person feels like I'm strong arming it and feels like I'm kind of being a bully. And so what may be compromised to one person may not be to another.
What else?
I feel like negotiations allow you to think outside the box,
Think outside the box. Yeah.
like new opportunities might come that weren't available when you initiated the contract, and then something new popped up, like, oh, we can do that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think thinking outside the box is key. And I find that usually the most creative people in negotiating usually do the best. All right. Anybody on Zoom have anything they want to add?
Coming into mutual agreement.
Just what negotiation is and what we talked about a minute ago. Sorry about that. Go ahead. Nothing. Okay. So what we're going to focus on today, we've obviously talked about growing your business in the first steps there, and then running your business. And so like I talked about, when it comes to running your business, I've said it before, I'll say it again, this is one of the most important steps, I think, of once you get a little bit further into real estate about what's going to be most important. So today we're going to focus on negotiating contracts. And that's one of the more integral parts of negotiation. But I want to be clear, negotiation, and let me go to the next slide here. We'll get to it in just a second. But basically, we're going to break down the most common points of negotiation. We're going to examine the 3 Ps of negotiation. We're going to analyze counter tactics when you are actually actively negotiating with somebody, real play, and then recap, basically your success or what's going to make you successful there. So this is what I was going to say a minute ago. When you're negotiating, you're not just negotiating with the other agent. And I think that's usually what we think of. But oftentimes we're negotiating with our buyer or we're negotiating with our seller. And what you don't realize is that you are kind of in the middle. And you're using tactics on both sides. And we'll talk about that in some of the tactics here of the good guy, bad guy, and the hot potato and things like that that you can use. And the way that I see it is you're playing this person off of that person, and you're being the good guy to both of them. And this is where kind of the good guy, bad guy comes in. But when you see yourself in the middle, you're able to negotiate a little bit better instead of taking a side and saying, and you absolutely want to push your side of the agenda, whether it's getting them to sign a contract like a client or whether it's getting the other agent to accept your offer. But as much as you can come across as impartial is going to help. So we'll talk about that as well. So how can your ability to negotiate change the outcome of a deal? Or your inability to negotiate?
Could affect just how much of the deal goes your way or your client's way. I guess how much of that benefits you.
Yeah, absolutely. It can affect, she'd said how much the deal affects you and how much you can get out of it, essentially. Yeah, how else? Yeah, you could lose a deal, not only the contract, but I've seen people negotiate so poorly that they not only lost the house that they were under contract on, they also lost their client. And so you not only lose the business that you had under contract, but you lose any future business with that person. So what are ways that you guys negotiate in everyday life? This is my favorite. What do you do in every day that's negotiation? Who are you negotiating against?
Okay. I negotiate what time I wake up every day.
Yeah. Who are you negotiating with?
Myself.
Yourself? Yeah. You can negotiate what time you wake up. Negotiating against your standards. Yeah.
I negotiate with my son.
You negotiate with your son.
I
Yeah.
like to clean up his room and then he gets the report.
Yeah.
Sometimes he doesn't agree, so yeah, I have to give him something different so he can do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Negotiating with kids is a nonstop battle. What else?
I guess like times, meetings, how you guys, decide the time.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. You're negotiating with coworkers, you said, your times, your meetings, anything like that. What else?
Find a new job too.
Yeah, you negotiate your pay. Absolutely. Anyway, yeah. Mhm. And I'm one of those very annoying people that negotiates everything. I'll negotiate for an extra drink when happy hour is over at the bar. I will negotiate on anything that I feel like I can. We just got a new well at our house and I negotiated the price of that. I feel like negotiation is available in everything. Have you ever been on a flight and negotiated a better seat, or negotiated for free drinks, or has your flight been canceled and you negotiated for more compensation? I think that once that you start seeing life through the lens of negotiation, it changes how you communicate with people. It changes how you prepare your communication, and then it changes how you frame your conversations. And I have one of those brains that's always thinking about the angle, frankly, like what can I get out of this that they're not going to want to give, or what do I really have to pay that, or is that really a rule that has to be followed? And it's amazing how often you get extra stuff just by asking, or you get cheaper things by asking, or so I would encourage you to change your frame of thought around everyday life and making everyday life a negotiation.
I feel like you miss out on a bunch of opportunities. If you don't have that mindset, you don't have that.
Absolutely. And I can tell you story after story after story of what I've gotten just by asking.
I think you may not even know.
Exactly. Yeah. We have a saying, closed mouths don't get fed. It's the idea that open your mouth, ask for something. You'll find out if you're going to get it or not. What's the worst they can say? No. So we'll talk about no here in a few minutes as well. So what are skills that great negotiators possess? Confidence. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Location. Yeah, communication. Likability, it said. Likability. Flexibility. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Flexibility. Knowledge. See? Yeah, I think so. I think all of those are important. Anything from Zoom? Any skills?
Charisma.
Charisma. Yeah.
Patience.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Patience.
Patience. Yeah, I think so. All right. I think that all of those are important. Say that again. Yes, and oftentimes in negotiation, that's called your BATNA. And basically that means like your walkaway point. I'll talk about a negotiation course that I think is really good that you guys can take. And what BATNA means, we'll talk about that as well. But last question here. Why is asking questions important in negotiating?
Figure out what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Spin it in your favor.
Huge. Figure out what they want and need so you can spin it in your favor.
Don't know what you don't know.
Don't know what you don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Why else are questions so important?
Somebody might divulge something that probably shouldn't, or they might benefit you in a way they don't know.
Yes.
That's why you ask the question.
People love to talk. Love to talk. And when you can get someone on the phone and get them talking, 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you more than they want to, and certainly more than they should. I can't tell you how many times I call an agent who has a buyer or has either a buyer or on the other side when I have the buyer, and they have a listing, and you say, hey, why are they selling the house? Or you don't lead with that because that's a question that you want to get to. You just start talking to them, start being friendly with them. And then by the end, you find out they're getting a divorce and they have to sell the house, and they're both already under contract on the next one. And so this one has to sell by that date. And you're like, great, I'll put this under contract and I will ask for everything to be redone because I know that you can't walk away. You're getting a divorce and both of you need to buy a new house. That kind of leverage in negotiation is huge. And so figuring out what's important and how to, a lot of times when I talk about negotiation, it sounds, I don't want to say swarmy, but what I was going to say is figuring out how to turn the screws. You know what I mean? You guys have, if they're going to give you the keys, use those keys to unlock the doors. And so my goal is to help open your eyes to how big negotiation can be and what it can do for your clients today. So this is one of those breakouts that they talked about us doing. We're not going to do that right now. We kind of did it as a group. So there's going to be a few breakouts that we might run as group projects. Are you guys okay with that today? Awesome. So essentially, once that you get to understanding what is important with negotiation, the goal is to move forward with the contract. And whether that be a contract with your client or a contract with the person that's buying or selling the home and the other agent, you always want to push for that end. And you want to know what that end is before you get into the negotiation. So if you don't know what your goal is and you're just negotiating just for negotiation, you're going to lose sight of what's important and you're going to blow it up. So, does that sound good? Any questions there? So let's brainstorm some negotiation issues. If you guys go to page 4 of the participation guide or your guide there, pull that up here. And what we're going to do here is we are just going to write these on the board. So we'll take about 5 minutes. And we're just going to talk about what do you negotiate in a deal. And so let me give you some examples and I'll even write these up. And just like Justin, I may not have the best spelling. Unlike Justin, it's going to be a little bit better, but don't worry if I spell things wrong. We all know what I mean. So price is going to be 1. And this is what people always think of right away. Price is number 1. Moving date. What else? Say that again.
Who pays what?
Who pays what? Like
Who pays the closing fee, who pays the warrant?
fees? Yep. What else? Inspection items.
Earnest money?
My computer volume for some reason is super low and shock the TV and then it disappears. I'm not sure why, but go ahead. Sorry.
Earnest money?
Earnest money? Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Let me turn the volume back up on the other one and turn it down on my computer so that we can hear on this one. I am. I'm over this table. That's my job. All right. Hopefully that's not too much of an echo. All right, we got earnest money. Earnest money. What else? Inclusions and exclusions. Inclusions and exclusions.
Are we strictly talking about negotiating with the buyer?
No, I mean, we can talk about negotiating with your client.
We negotiate what we're looking for.
You would negotiate what you're looking for.
Well, like, sometimes clients like, I have $1,000, I want for a bedroom, $5,000. There has to be a lot of
Yeah, I see that.
guided negotiation.
Is there a lot of feedback on that Zoom? There is.
Can you use that one for now?
Yeah.
You can mute the phone. Or
That one isn't muted. Yeah, let me mute this one for now. We're going back to this system. Sorry, guys. All right. What about furniture? I guess that is part of the inclusions, exclusions. What else? Closing date, yeah.
few big ones we're missing. Appraisal gap. Appraisal gap is a huge one. I think that goes into fees a little bit.
Whether or not there's like a closing arrangement.
Yeah, so moving date,
Oh,
commission, big one. And I feel like commission is one that is going to come up more and more in our career. Every single deal, you're going to be negotiating commission. With the iBuyers, with Redfin, with everything that's going on in our industry, commission negotiations are going to become extremely rampant. And so that's a big one that you guys have to just nail with your clients.
Unless you're working with builders.
Unless you're working with builders, that's just shit. What else? Anything else that you feel like you negotiate throughout the process?
What I need to fix.
Like inspection stuff? Okay. So let's go to page 6 in your activity guide really quick. And let's just read we've got the list of negotiation items, which is what we talked about. And I guess on page 5, it goes through a few more. So you've got price terms, closing costs, and closing date, conveyances, which are exclusions and inclusions, earnest money, and option fee. Has anybody ever used an option fee?
what?
An option fee?
No,
No? Okay. So
what is it?
an option fee is basically a fee to have the option to buy the property. And so let's say that I want to buy your property in a year, but I'm not quite ready. I'll say, look, I want to buy your property for $350,000 next year. And here's $10,000 for that option to buy it in a year. This is one of the ways that there's an option fee. There's a bunch of different creative ways to do it. But this is the main one that you see where you say, in 1 year, I'll give you $350,000 for the property. I have an entire year to exercise that option. And your property might be worth $500,000 next year, but my price is $350,000 because I paid $10,000 right now for that option. Oftentimes that's non-refundable. If you do end up purchasing the property, a lot of times it'll go into that fee or into your earnest money or things like that. But that is what an option fee is. And that's a huge part of negotiation. It's a bit more of an advanced tactic in real estate, but it's something that we do see.
How often do you see that?
Not a ton. It's more often used in commercial, and oftentimes in commercial, you pay an option fee just to do inspections. And so then it's like, hey, I want to put this under contract, but let me do my due diligence before we officially tie it up. And so you'll do a letter of intent with an option fee to run all of your inspections, and then you can tie it up a lot of times. So, and then repairs. So repairs are a big one. And what you don't realize a lot of times is you're pre-negotiating all of these things with the offer. And so we're going to talk about preparing here in a minute to negotiate. If you don't understand the contract, or you aren't writing a contract in a way that's advantageous for your client, or countering offers in a way that's advantageous for your seller, then you've already started to lose on negotiation. I'll give some examples of that here in a few minutes. But understanding the contract is going to be paramount to being able to negotiate well. So, give me 1 second. So on page 6, what I want you guys to do is let's just talk through basically these tips. Let's go down the line and have you guys read through them, and then we'll talk about it just kind of as a group of what's important and which ones you guys like the most. So Carlos, will you start us? Number 1.
Well, all else be professional.
Be professional. Yeah, and then really briefly, tell me what that means to you. Like, what does that mean in negotiation?
I mean, don't cross no boundaries, don't insult anybody, don't blow them off, reply. Yeah, you're supposed to reply.
Yeah, absolutely. Because how much more willing are you to negotiate with somebody that you like than someone that you don't? Yep. All right. Number 2, Tyler.
Remember your goal, to sign the contract. This is what you're driving towards and what both agents and their clients have in mind.
Yeah, you have to know what you're negotiating, why. A lot of times, I was probably like this when we first started real estate. I would negotiate and argue just to negotiate and argue because I thought I was doing the best for my client. You know, I thought if I could fight every single point, that I'm going to get them more. And that's just misguided. And it's a just stressful way of doing business. I'm sure there are agents out there that were like, I will never work with him again because every piece was a battle. We negotiated when we could do the walkthrough. And they're like, what the hell is that? Why are we negotiating dumb shit? And so knowing why you're negotiating is key. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name at the beginning. Simon. Simon? Yeah. You want to do number 3?
Control what you say and you are involved with their transaction. You create anxiety in your client or other parties, you're reducing their leverage in negotiations.
Yes. And so that's what I was just getting at. You know, you have to keep anxiety low. You have to keep it calm. And then what we were talking about earlier about just talking to talk, you're going to give up stuff that you don't want to. So knowing what you're going to say, knowing how you're going to say it, and controlling your communication is key. Jen?
Continually refer to motivation, remind your client why they want to buy or sell, and help them reevaluate their request if they are becoming unreasonable.
Referring to motivation is huge, huge. This is going to be the number 1 thing that helps you keep clients under contract. So when you have clients that are losing their shit over a broken door or over a scuffed up baseboard or over dumb stuff, and I've seen deals fall apart over the stupidest thing. I talked to a guy the other day who had a deal fall apart over a $10 part. And the client was like, I'll buy the part if they'll just let me install it. And so I was like, nope, we're not doing anything. It's like, well, I can't do this without that piece in there per the lender. So I was like, I don't know what to tell you. It fell apart over a $10 part. And that's the quality agents, truly. Like, obviously there's a bullheaded seller there, but if you can't go back to the seller and say, hey, John, you told me in the beginning that your goal is to sell this house so that you can move to Texas to be closer to your grandkids, and you're gonna let this fall apart over a $10 piece. How is that getting you closer to being near your grandkids? And it just provides that moment of clarity, because of how many times you guys hear, it's about the principle. That is the dumbest bullshit, and sorry for my cussing, but that is bullshit. It's not about the principle of a thing. That's just a way of saying I'm digging my heels in and being unreasonable. And so your ability as an agent to get their head out of their ass and help them to see that it's not about a $10 part, the principle. Fighting over principle is a terrible way to fight. That's where you're going to win in negotiations. Coming back to their motivation. Savannah?
Oh, sorry, I was like, okay. Don't reveal too much. Listen more than talk. Keep your client's motivation close to your chest.
Yes. So again, when we talk about motivation, it's key. But you don't want to tell them what your client's motivation is. You don't want to tell them that your clients just got divorced and they hate each other and they don't want to live in this house one more day than they have to. Keep your clients close to the chest and don't overshare. Learn how to listen. And sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Brenda.
Brenda?
Yeah.
Brenda, do you want to be number 6?
Sure. Don't be attached to the outcome. You can't get everything you want. Maybe dismiss it.
You and your clients want?
Oh, your clients want all the time. Don't let it affect your mindset. If the deal doesn't go through, or if your client doesn't act on your recommendation, find a different winner for your client.
Yes. So this is a hard one for us. We oftentimes get tied up in the outcome. And we start seeing the commission come in. And I mean, there's a very valid point. There's a coach that always says, every time that you terminate a buyer on inspection, you're cutting your pay in half. Does anybody know what that means? Does anybody get that? So you have to do all of this work to get your client down to this point, and after inspection, you're almost done. Every time that you reset that, you're doing all of that work again. And so you're putting in all of those hours again. So over here, you're making $40 an hour. When you reset and have to start over, you're making $20 an hour. So it's hard at that point to walk away from it. And you're emotionally invested and you need that money and you want to get that client closed that you get paid. But as soon as you start doing that, you lose the upper hand in negotiation. Once that you start being completely attached to the outcome, the other agent can see it on your breath and you've lost all of your ability to be impartial and have a good outcome for your client. So being unattached from that outcome is key. When you can say, all right, yeah, that's fine, we'll just walk away. That's so much more powerful than, I don't know, let me see if I can get my client to do that. And I really want to keep this together. And I know they like the house. And let me just, like, you're just vomiting your desperation on the other side. And they can see it. They can smell it. They can taste it. It's terrible. So don't be attached to the outcome. Have any of you guys seen the movie The Tao of Steve? It's an older movie. It's from the 90s, probably. That's your homework. It's a little bit of the Tao, T-A-O, the Tao of Steve. That's about basically, this guy, it's around the premise of landing women. It's this really fat guy who you'd think wouldn't be able to get any girls ever, and it's how he gets girls. But he has these 3 principles, and they're great negotiation principles. And so, forgive me for the content of the movie, but if you watch it, I think there's some really good negotiation stuff in it. And one of them is be unaffected, walk away.
Have you seen Hitch?
Hitch, yeah.
Sounds like that.
Yeah, similar idea, absolutely. All right. Any questions on those tactics or on kind of those strategic points? Because those are huge. Okay. So we're going to look at the 3 P's of negotiation. So turn to page 7. These are your 3 P's. And I'm gonna always argue that number 1, prepare, is most important. But I want to talk a little bit about 2 and 3 because this doesn't spend much time on number 2, which is actually number 3. People say 2. Position. Position is huge. And this is when you're actually negotiating with someone. How you set yourself up, how you talk about it. And we'll go into more detail here in a minute. But for those of you guys who have read Pitch Anything, this book is phenomenal. It's one of the best negotiation books out there. It's called Pitch Anything by Warren Klaff. And it's all about positioning. It's all about framing yourself and kind of controlling the conversation and how to position your argument and your pitch and your negotiation in a way that gets into the brain of the other person in a way that they truly understand what you're saying and get on board with it. So Pitch Anything it's a huge book. We just read it as a team and I really encourage you guys to read it. But let's talk about number 1 first, which is prepare. So what does preparing do for you? Let's start there.
Builds confidence.
Builds confidence, absolutely. Yeah. Builds your knowledge.
Basically just sets you up for success and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, sets you up for success, absolutely. What else? Could you repeat the question? Yeah, what does preparing do for you in negotiation? Like how does that give you the upper hand and the advantage?
Just gives you clarity and confidence.
Yeah.
You can't guarantee the other person to prepare. So if you're prepared, then you've already done the leg up.
Yeah. I'm sure we've all been in the spot where you're negotiating with somebody and the other side knows the contract better and catches you off your feet. Or they have a better idea than you do. Or they just
have gone through this more and they're better prepared, and all of a sudden you're reeling and you're backpedaling. And how does that feel in negotiation? Yeah, it feels terrible. You've just lost the upper hand. You've essentially lost the negotiation. And what they'll tell you in pitching is you've lost the frame in negotiation. And so they now have that frame and you're now playing in their world. And that's not a good place to negotiate from. And so the first step is you gotta learn. You gotta learn what you're negotiating. And let's actually talk about these. You gotta know your goal, right? And so your goal changes, obviously, depending on what you're like. Is your goal to get 7% commission? Because there's agents out there who get 7% commission consistently on deals, on listings, when everybody else is racing to the bottom and they're paying 2% on a listing, and you're getting 7%, you're crushing it. So is that your goal? Or is your goal just to get someone under contract? Is your goal to get everything on inspection taken care of? Because if it is, you're going to write your contract with somebody else. So I encourage you to know your goal, know your client's goals, because your client's goals are going to become yours as well. Second one is know your client. Are they going to fight everything, or are they going to just roll over? And are you going to have to negotiate for them, or are you going to have to negotiate against them sometimes for their best interests? Do you have that seller who's going to lose a deal over a $10 part in his home? Because if so, you got to negotiate against your client, because they're never going to sell their home. And so you got to know your client. You got to think ahead. I think this goes without saying, but when you're writing your contract and you're writing in your appraisal gap, what's that going to do to your contract in 3 weeks? Is it going to blow it up? Is it going to give your client an advantage? But if you can't think ahead to what this is the actual outcome of this is going to be, then you're going to walk into just hazard after hazard when you're negotiating. And then set clear expectations. Let's say you do write in the appraisal gap and your client is fine with it, but you haven't set the expectations that the property is not going to appraise, and they actually are going to need that $50,000 cash. And that day comes and they're caught off guard and they say, wait a minute, I actually have to bring an extra $50,000 to the table and you didn't set that expectation. That's an instance where you're probably going to lose the deal and you're probably going to lose the client. We talked about that, right? When you negotiate poorly, oftentimes you lose the house because you didn't negotiate well. And sometimes if you do it bad enough like that, and they think that you don't have their best interests in mind, you also lose your client. And so then you not cut your rate in half, you just work for free for however long. You need to be informed. That goes without saying. Obey the laws. This is one where it's a little bit of gray area. No, I'm kidding. Obey the laws. And know your documents inside and out. Knowing your contract better than the person that you're negotiating against is paramount. So take some really good contract classes, really understand what those clauses say and what they mean. And did you guys know that if you don't have your appraisal done by your appraisal deadline, even if you don't even if the value is above or below, it doesn't matter, you can object at that point. Did you know that? So if you say our appraisal deadline is, October 10th, and October 10th rolls around, your appraisal hasn't happened, you can object to the appraisal. And so other agents may not know that. They may say, well, you should blew your deadline. And you say, actually, we're objecting because it didn't happen by then. And so knowing your contract in and out and little nuances that are in there is pretty key. So anything on this? Questions on this? What do you think is most important? What do you guys think is on this list that you didn't think of before?
Setting clear expectations.
Yeah.
I think knowledge is important. What I didn't think of before was setting the clear expectations with the client of what's going to happen in the future.
Yes, expectation setting is huge. And my business partner, Luke, will set expectations with the other agent when he accepts an offer on a listing. He'll say, look, I want you to know we're taking your offer because it's as is. We have a backup offer. If you come back after inspection and ask for anything, I don't care what it is, I want to tell you right now, before we accept your offer, the answer is no. We're not going to do any negotiating on anything. Do you understand? And so he goes in and sets the expectation with the other agent.
that this is how it's gonna be. You wrote this in the contract, we're gonna hold you to it. An expectation setting is huge.
For me, it's knowing your goal, because it's easy to think, oh, commission, that's the goal. But on a case by case scenario, there's usually like something more specific that is good to keep in mind.
Yeah, knowing your goal is huge. And like you said, they change. Your goal at the beginning is just to get someone under contract. That's it. And I always tell my clients that, like, look, when we write an offer, we have one goal, it's to get the house. Everything comes after that. You know, and so on listings, we'll see people start to negotiate inspection items on the contract. And they'll say, in the additional provisions, seller will fix back fence. And immediately the seller thinks, what the hell is this? I have 7 offers and they're already asking me to fix the back fence. That's a no. And so don't write BS into your contract. It shouldn't be there. You have an inspection period. You have an inspection objection for that reason. Don't put inspection items on your contract. It's a terrible place to negotiate it. You're just weakening your position off the bat.
That's all the time.
I would say all the time.
Yeah.
I would never.
That's like the third time I've heard that, so.
Really? Yeah, I would never write an inspection item into my contract. Like, I just listed my personal house and someone asked me to remove a fridge and take a lawnmower and tiles out of the garage in the offer. I was like, well, we're not going with them. They seem high maintenance and like they're gonna be a pain in the ass. And so it's a great way to get disqualified. Know your goal, and your goals change. Anything else that stood out?
Do you have an extra one of those packets? Sorry. There's some over here.
Oh, yeah, there's someone over there. Yep. All right, let's talk about questions. There's 2 kinds of questions, open-ended and closed-ended. Before we jump into them, what are your thoughts on those 2? Does anybody work in retail? Yeah? Yeah? Which ones do you guys ask when you're working in retail and you approach a client?
When you shopping for?
When you shopping for? Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause
Not
if you
yes or
walk-
no.
Right, if you walk up and say, hey, can I help you today? What do they say?
No, I'm good.
No, I'm good. And your goal is to engage, right? So I think you guys can see where this is going, but open-ended questions have so much more power than closed-ended questions. And you can ask fewer open-ended questions to get where you want to go. So let's look at a few of these, open-ended versus closed-ended. What additional information should I know? That's such a vague question, and it can get your client talking for quite a while. It can get the other agent talking for a little while. So Tyler, if you're listing a house and I call you and I say, hey, what information should I know about this house? What are you gonna say?
Probably something I should.
Yeah, probably something that you shouldn't, versus, hey, is this a good house?
Right.
And so just asking kind of vague questions and see where they go with it. What's important about closing in 30 days versus do you have a specific time that you need to sell your house? And they say 30 days. So what does the open-ended question there get to? Like, hey, what's important about closing in 30 days?
Why? The goal,
The
yeah.
goal, the why, their motivation. And so open-ended questions get to motivation, get to desire, get to those things that you can come back to when you're negotiating. And so when you're asking these open-ended questions, you better be taking notes, because you're going to need those notes when you're negotiating with this person, be it the other agent or your client. Has anybody ever asked open-ended questions with somebody and they give you one-word answers? Yeah, so Savannah, let's try this really quick. I'm gonna ask you some open-ended questions and just give me short answers. So what's important to you about moving in 30 days?
I want to get out quick.
Get out quick.
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me more about why you want to get out quick?
It's just important to me.
It's important to you.
Because, do you want me to fight you? Because I can keep going in circles. But like, I get what you're trying to do.
So what I'm doing there is straight out of this book. I've never split the difference. Has anybody read this book? Yeah.
I
What's that?
read a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should.
This is from a FBI hostage negotiator,
Mm.
and it is not only a phenomenal book on how to negotiate, but it gives you, it's also really fun to read, but it gives you really good tactics. That one that I just used on you is where you essentially repeat the last 3 words or 2 words of what someone said to get a little bit more information out of them. Without asking more, you just repeat them. And so when someone says, yeah, I really want to move to Texas, you say, oh, you want to move to Texas? With a little inflection, it begs them just to say more. And they say, yeah, you know, my grandkids are down there and I really want to spend more time with them. You say more time with them? They say, yeah, I don't really spend any time with them right now. And it causes them to keep talking without you. It's crazy how when you do that and you shut up, they finally need to fill that void. And you can't do that with yes or no questions. Hey, do you want to move to Texas? And they say yes. You say yes. It doesn't work.
They're like, yeah.
Yeah, and that is the second part of this. You shut up, you ask the question, you shut up. We've all seen people who say, hey, I know that you said that you want to move down to Texas to be closer to your kids. And then they just asked the question and answered it for themselves. You know, and they say, I love Texas. I think San Antonio is great. You said you're moving to San Antonio, right? Oh, I love it. Got that nice river walk. And I went down there and they just don't shut up. Don't be that person. And so say, you know, what additional information should I know? You say you want to move in 30 days. What's important to you about moving in 30 days? And then later on when you're pitching them, you say, you told me that it was important that you move down there in 30 days because of X, Y, and Z. Is this $10 park on your house more important than seeing your kid's first day or your grandkids' first day of school?
Was that your situation?
No.
With that guy, it wasn't.
No. But the beauty of open-ended questions is you're going to find out more, and you're going to use those things later on to turn that motivation. Any examples you guys have had of using open-ended questions and how they work well or haven't worked well?
I mean, definitely in retail. I worked for a company where we had to obtain clients and we had to keep clientele. So that was like the whole approach is just like, you're going to make them like you and you're going to like kind of manipulate them in a good way to where they're going to open up and just want to tell you and have you help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you guys heard of the Ford technique? Everybody in here knows it? Okay. So we don't have to go over it, but that's a great way to ask open-ended questions. Have you guys ever been on the line when someone's like, and I get this call probably twice a week. They go, hey Garrett, are you too busy to work with more buyers right now? And I say, no. And they're like, could you use a few more leads? Yes. And they're like, if I got you more leads, would you appreciate the money? Yes. And you know what they're doing. They're just asking close-ended questions to get me to start saying yes, to get me down that line of yes, that when they say, great, if we could do this for you, do you want to sign up? In hopes that I just continue to say yes. Is that a good negotiation technique?
No.
Do you guys get those? Do you see it coming or are you tricked? And then you're like, yes, I did. Oh shit, I didn't mean to say yes. You got me. Now I'm going to sign your contract. Has that ever happened? So I'm going to tell you about one more book right now because books are key. And these people know more than I do about these things. And you can get great nuggets from them. It's called Go for No. Has anybody read that book? Go for No. The whole idea is that A, in order to be successful, a lot of people are going to tell you no. So don't be afraid of it. B, and if they talk about this and never split the difference, you don't know where you are until you get to know. And so if you, let's say you're offering on a house and you offer $50,000 under asking, they take it. What's your client going to think?
Maybe even less.
Yes, that is what they're going to think. They first will be stoked that they got the house for $50,000 less, but then they might think, oh shit, should we write it for $75,000 less? Or, you know, let's say that you write for $20,000 over and they sign it right away. your clients are gonna think, oh, should we have written for less? Should we have maybe gotten a better deal on this? And so going for no, and this is a common strategy with everything. You don't know where you stand until you get shut down. And that's the basis of your negotiation. And so if I say, hey, I like that shirt, can I buy it for you for $20? And you say, yeah, all day, here you go. I think, shit, I should have said 10. I should have said, hey, would you give that to me? And you say no, and I go, great, I just sell it for 5. Just sell it for 7. You know, if he just says yes right off the bat, and it's the same thing with when someone's leading you down the path, yes, that's not a true yes. Hey, would you like some free leads? Yes. Would you pay, you know, like they don't know where my walkaway point is until they get me to that walkaway point. So you got to go for no. The last time that I bought a new car, I beat up the salesperson until I got to $500 below where I knew they were willing to go. And you know how I knew that that was where they were? Because I said, well, shit, I thought we were going to have a deal today. I'm sorry, but it's $500 and that's what I want. And you guys are a giant company and you can take a $500 hit more than I can. And she's like, I can't do anything. I'm sorry, if I could, I would. I said, all right, well, I appreciate your time, and I left. And I had to make sure that she was willing to lose the sale over $500. And I called her from the parking lot and said, all right, drop the paperwork. She wasn't happy about it, but I had to know what the bottom line was. I had to get her to her absolute no to know where I was getting the best deal. Does that make sense to everybody? Going for no? And you can't figure that out with open and close ended questions. So read go for no, read never split the difference.
They talk about like getting 3 no's and that go for no.
They do, yeah.
I took a class about like getting 3 no's before you kind of give up.
Yeah, and then what we're talking about at that point is overcoming objections. Because oftentimes the first no is, no, I don't really want to spend the time on this right now. Or no, I don't understand the value of what you're telling me. The second no oftentimes is, no, not right now. Like I understand what you're saying, I see the value in it, now is not a good time. I've been told by sellers, no, we're not selling. And then a year later, or 6 months later, that house is on the market with somebody else. And so it wasn't a no, we're not selling. It was a no, this isn't the time that I want to talk about it. Or no, we're not ready to entertain that idea. It wasn't a no, we're never going to sell. And so once that you get some of those, I guess, like layers of the onion off, then you can ask a little bit more and you can figure out more about what their motivation is, what their yes is going to be when they get to yes. But you got to start at no. And then you got to figure out what those objections are and you got to dig a little deeper. And then you can start to negotiate with them on timeline or price or whatever their true objections are, rather than the false ones that they're going to throw out in the beginning. Is everybody still following? Okay, a little off script here, but I think that's key. So these are great scripts and great questions. Is anybody taking bold? Okay, it's coming. And I highly encourage all of you to take it. It's changed a bit over the years, but it is a powerful class. And one of the scripts is, what would happen if? Why is it important to you when? And just getting to those deeper questions of, we're going to use the Texas example again, with grandpa moving down to be near his grandkids. And you say, you know, John, what would happen if you don't sell your house and you don't get to move to Texas? And what you're doing here is you're setting up here's the prize. We're going to sell your house. We're going to get you this money and you're going to move to Texas. And you're going to run through this script with them. You told me you want to move to Texas. You want to be there on the first day of school so you can see your grandkids go to school and then you can be there when they get off the bus and help your kids move out there. That makes perfect sense. I think that we can sell your house in time for you to get to Texas on that timeline and have money to buy a new home and be there for childcare for your grandkids. But what would happen if we don't? And what just happened in your brains? Does anybody know?
Switch over the negative.
Yeah, switched over to the fear of loss. And the number one motivator, there's been thousands of studies, the number one motivator for people isn't gain, isn't like, yeah, I want to move to Texas and that'll be fun, blah, blah, blah. You know what it is? It's the fear of losing something that you thought you had. And so your goal in negotiating a lot of times is to paint a picture for someone. And this is going to go back to motivation. You paint a picture of what their life could be. You paint a picture of how great it could be and how beautiful things are going to be and blah, blah, blah. And they have this planned out, and then you take it away. And you say, what would happen if we don't sell your house? And you're going to get them into the negative. And they're going to go, I don't know. We got to sell it. I guess that I would miss out on their life. I would maybe miss out on a good house. My kids would have to get a nanny. And then I don't know that I would spend as much time with my grand. And you get them down into that hole a little bit. You say, great. Well, here are the things that we need to do to sell your home. Same thing with the buyer. You walk through the house and you're like, oh man, I can see your kids running around here. I can see this backyard is perfect for your dogs. It is exactly what you told me. I mean, look at how open an area this kitchen is. It has the appliances that you want. This is the house for you. What would happen if we don't get it? And so do you see you're creating a picture, and then what would happen if? That question is so powerful for people, because it almost feels like you're taking things away. And not to be political, but there was, people who ran on taking away Obamacare for years and years and years, right? And dismantling it and all that. And as soon as they got into power, they realized that it's a nice stump point, but the American public realized, oh shit, I'm losing something, whether they were or not. And they weren't able to get rid of universal health care because people said it's a fear of loss, whether they liked it or didn't like it or liked the publicity around it or hated it or any of that. Unless there was a party that was able to put something else in so that you didn't feel like you were losing something, they weren't able to take it away. It's that fear of loss that is so incredibly powerful. And so if you can use that in negotiation, and you can use that in how you set expectations, and you can use that in knowing people's motivation, fear of loss is huge. All right, enough on that. Let's talk about why is that important to you. This is another one that, why is it important to you to get down to Texas? That's how you are, these are leading questions that are going to get you deeper with your client. Okay. Someone, everybody go to page 9 for me. So I want you guys to read the scenario below. Circle or underline the key areas in which you need to have more information before you can confidently negotiate. And then write 3 specific questions that you would ask your client in the space below. So I'll give you, 3 to 5 minutes to do that really quick. So you're going to write 3 questions that you would ask your client before you write an offer. What more information do you want out of your client before you call the other agent, before you ask what's important to them, like before you move forward at all on this house? What more do you need to know out of your client? All right. What do you guys got? What are your clarifying questions?
Ask about motivations.
What is the actual question that you'd ask your client there?
What are your motivations? Why do you want to buy this property so bad? Like, what do you really love about this place?
Okay, yeah. I think that's a good one. Just to get back to making sure that it aligns with what they told you. What else?
I said, like, are you willing to go in on the as-is condition with the roof leak?
Absolutely. So will you take it as is at the price that you want? Keeping the roof leak. What else?
When are you looking to move by?
When are you looking to move by? Yeah. Yeah.
What is your max comfortable monthly payment?
What is your max monthly, max monthly payment that you're comfortable with?
Let's say, what is your math? Is the 155 or that's off?
Yeah.
Top.
Yep. Does anybody see one step further on this? You guys have the same question essentially. What are you missing?
I think I was thinking like how much longer until your student loans are paid off.
Yeah. Are you what about on these guys? The monthly payment or the purchase price? Let's take that one step further. What do they qualify for? What do they qualify for? Sure. Yeah.
Well, since there's been quite a bit of activity on the listing, are you willing to, I guess it kind of is still the same thing, but are you willing to, compete with your offer?
Yeah. Are you willing to be competitive if you need to?
I guess you can use the what if, like
What
what if you lost it?
Yeah. What if you lost
Can
it
you-
for $5,000 more? We're all missing the mark just a little bit. Why is that number important to you? Why is 155 the price? Why is the monthly payment of whatever that is important to you? Because we're asking what's, like, what would you like to pay? What would you do if it was that? But why does that matter? Because let's say it's $5,000 more. Did you know that that's an extra $15 a month? So why is, a payment of $450 a month so important? What would $455 do to your life a month? And how would you feel knowing that for $5 a month you lost this house? And so I'm asking more motivational questions to dig in versus what I would call like tactical questions with your client. And so your goal with all of these is essentially your client's throwing up an objection, right? They're saying, here's my top price. And you are digging in to figure out what's behind that objection. Why do you feel that way? Why is that number important to you? What does that do for you having your payment at $450 instead of $455? Or just not even instead of, what does it do for you with that monthly payment? And so you're digging in a little bit deeper than just the surface of what?
I don't know if it's the right place, but if the client is like, well, I only have a loan for 155.
Great. Yeah. If they only have a loan for 155, then hey, we probably should be looking at competitive 175 houses. But yeah, no, I agree. And I think that that's important.
So, and you would say, how would you feel knowing you lost this dream house for, $15 a month?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because if it's truly $15 and it checks all of their boxes, and you say, look, if we could get this for $5,000 more and it's $15 or $15 more a month for you, what would you be willing to sacrifice every month to be in this house for $15 more? Would you get coffee at Starbucks less a month? Would you, doesn't matter, turn your thermostat down 1 degree in winter? And so just digging in a little bit more of their motivation. Like what's more important to you? Starbucks 3 times a month or this house. And then you can reframe it, but you have to go back to their motivation. Flip it on the seller. What's more important to you, seller? Getting an extra $5,000 or being there for your grandkids in Texas? And so why is that? A lot of times you'll see this with sellers where they're like, no, I have to get $700,000 that I listed my house for. And you say, tell me a little bit more about why $700,000 is so important. We'll say, well, it just, the neighbor's house sold for 700 or 650, mine's better. But why is that the number? Why isn't it 695? Why isn't it 705? Why 700,000? And so you're just digging in a little bit more into their motivation and into their decision-making process. Because a lot of times we just get stuck on these hills and we'll die on them. It's the $10 part for the seller. And there's no rationale behind it. There's no reason behind it. And so once that you can break into that mentality with them, it makes things a lot easier. So any other questions that you would ask? What about if the seller counters with a full price offer, would you want them to fix the roof? And so what you're doing is you're just playing out scenarios in your head right now. You're saying, if they did an insurance claim, would you buy the house for, would you pay their insurance premium? Or they're not their insurance premium, but their $1,000 deductible. Or if they have a $2,000 roof deductible, would you raise your price $2,000 for them to make an insurance claim and you to get a new roof? And this is where we talked about earlier, somebody said being creative in negotiation.
These, like, the things you're talking about with the roof, are those things that you, like, let's say, I mean, in this example, you know roof damage when I guess you guys walk through the house, or it was listed like maybe on MLS roof damage, I think, but if it's not, when are you, like, are you negotiating this before you submit the offer? But are they like all these hypotheticals, like, is there a roof problem? How do you feel about this? Is there flooding issues? Like, am I supposed to know all of these what if?
No.
Okay.
But the key of this is figuring out how to negotiate with the information you have. And knowing where your client's walkway point is, knowing what buttons you can push with the seller. We've had, because we've had houses that have fallen out of contract. And we come in as a buyer behind them and we say, hey, what happened? And they say, oh, the sewer line's shot and the seller's not letting me fix it. So then you go back to your buyer and you say, look, sewer line shot, here's the report. Here's a quote to get it fixed. It's $15,000. How do you want to offer on this house knowing that that's the scenario? And so it's more the questions that you're going to ask your buyer. It's more prepping about how you're going to negotiate that. And that was a real scenario we had where, yeah, the sewer line was shot, or we had one recently where the roof was shot. And so I was like, look, we're not fixing the roof. And that's why the last person terminated. So you either buy it knowing that the roof is shot or you don't. And so that's the time where we said, buyer will pay X amount, and we maybe brought it down $10,000. And then in additional provisions, we say buyer will not have the opportunity to ask the seller to repair the roof.
So the seller, if they know that information, I mean, I know in my head that it disclose. But like if their buyer pulled out and I was like, oh, what happened to the buyer that pulled out? And let's say it was something smaller than a roof. Do you still have to tell me, or can you say, oh, they changed their mind?
I mean, there's two answers to that. There's the legal answer that, yeah, you gotta tell them. I mean, you can say, if it's a material fact of your home, you gotta tell them. Or you can just say they didn't like the condition, give them the seller's property disclosure. You don't have to say, we went back and forth over a $10 part and the seller's an asshole. You can just say, we couldn't get past inspection, and we've updated our seller's property disclosure with everything on the inspection. Or here's the inspection report. But as a seller, yes, you're obligated to disclose everything. In reality, oftentimes they don't. They say, oh, buyer got cold feet. And then you do the inspection and you're like, they didn't get cold feet, this house is shit. And so they're just wasting their time by doing that. If you're working with the seller and you know stuff is wrong with the house and you know anybody's gonna have an issue with it, save yourself some time and disclose it, rather than wasting 2 weeks while they do their inspections if you know they're gonna terminate. So, that's page 9, right? Okay. Let's move on to when you're talking to someone, a lot of times this is with the other agent. These are some great tips. So when you are going to present an offer, you guys gotta call the other agent every time. Don't ever send an offer without speaking with the agent unless they aren't answering. But be the better agent and call, find out what's important to the seller. Just get the other agent talking. I think I heard in one of Art's classes that they were asking buyers or buyer agents in this really hard market, how are you getting people under contract? What's the most important thing? What do you guys think it was?
To call the listing, I know it's important.
No, but when, like, there's buyer agents in this office that were getting clients under contract 2-to-1 to everybody else. And so most people are writing 5 to 7 offers for every buyer. There were agents in this office that were writing 2 for every buyer and getting their clients under contract. What were they doing different?
I mean, I guess if you imagine like not asking for much, like, you know.
Yeah, definitely part of it is writing good contracts.
Yeah.
There's another part.
Building rapport with the agent.
Bingo, that's it.
Mm.
And so getting the other agent on that phone to like you and to want to work with you is paramount. It's key. And this goes back to knowing your goal when you're writing your contract. I cannot tell you how many times I've had a listing and the agent calls me and they're just an ass. And they're like, well, did you know that the roof doesn't look like it's good? Or why is there all this junk in the yard? Or then they're like accosting me on the phone. Do you think I ever take that offer in a multiple offer situation? Hell no. I take their offer and I go find the client or the agent that I like. And I'm like, hey, here's where we're at. Can you beat it or match it? By being adversarial on your call with another agent, you're just doing a disservice to your client. And so when you first call that other agent, pay attention to verbal and nonverbal clues. Keep quiet. Once you present an offer, you get to a point where you're like, hey, here's what we're offering. Then just shut up. Silence is one of the best negotiation tactics. When you call and you say, hey, we're thinking about writing an offer on your house. I know it's listed at $450, but my client wanted to offer at $430. Just sit there, make it weird, make it uncomfortable. That agent's gonna start talking, right? They're gonna say, well, it's probably not gonna get it done. We have somebody else who's calling, they really want that price. What's important to them about that price? Shut up. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but we always feel the need to fill a void. I can see it with you guys right now when I say something and I shut up, you're all just like, this is weird, this is awkward. But there's people who will do the 10-second rule, where they'll ask a question or they'll say something or throw something out there and then they'll shut up and they'll literally count to 10. And you know what the other person does? What's that? Freak out, they start panicking, they start talking, they start saying things that they shouldn't, that they wouldn't. And so say something and shut up. Listen carefully to what's important to the other party. So if they say, look, my clients need to be out in 3 weeks, don't write a 4-week offer. Or if they say, look, my seller isn't going to fix the roof, don't write an offer with the roof included or saying they're going to fix it. I have seen where someone says, look, we're taking a washer and dryer with us. People write offers with washer and dryer included. It's like, are you dumb? Or you just don't want to get your client under contract? Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. Your one goal when you're calling that agent and you're writing your offer is to get it under contract. Right? Okay. Stay calm and relaxed. I remember my first $1 million listing. The guy who bought it represented himself as a commercial broker. And I was outgunned. And he knew I was outgunned. I knew I was outgunned. And we went into negotiations and I can't tell you how many times he said, Garrett, calm down. I can feel that you're getting emotional on this. We're just talking about inspection items. We're just talking about price. And you don't need to be so upset about this.
And I remember specifically, we were at my house, the kids were going nuts in the other room. I was in our walk-in closet, pacing back and forth, and I felt my blood pressure rising, and I was getting upset. My voice was getting higher, and I was getting louder, and he was like, Garrett, calm down. We're just having a conversation. And that did two things. A, it made me realize I'm being asked. And two, I realized I had lost all ability to negotiate in this. He's got the upper hand. He knew it, I knew it. Like, I just gave up more than I should have on that by not being calm. I had an agent in my first year. I sent over an inspection objection, and he called me up and screamed at me, cussed at me, everything. I can't believe you must be a rookie. You don't know what you're doing. What am the F am I supposed to do with this? Take it back to my client? This is bullshit, and just up and down. And I just sat there. I didn't say anything. And about once he was done, he was quiet for a second, and I heard him say to someone in the room, "This asshole just hung up on me." And I said, "I didn't hang up on you, but I'm about to." And he went off again, and I hung up on him. And I texted him and said, "Look, I'm a professional and an adult. You're a professional and an adult. When you're ready to speak to me like an adult, we can talk, but don't call me back until then." And he knew right then. He lost the upper hand at negotiation. And he was right. My inspection was bullshit. I had a crazy client. We had like 35 things on this house that he wanted him to fix. One of the steps was too tall. I was like, "How do you want him to fix that?" He's like, "I don't know, just make it right." I'm like, "They can't fix that. It's a concrete. You want them to tear out $5,000 worth of concrete to change the riser on the step by this much? I'm not going to do that." And he's like, "I don't care, do it." And I had to write it in. It was bullshit. He and I both knew it, but he lost the ability to negotiate because he couldn't control his emotions. This is huge. We see it all the time. Control your emotions. Focus on your customers' needs. This is a big one. A lot of times we get too personally attached and we feel like we're losing. And we completely lose track of what our customer wants or what our customer needs because we want to win. That's one that I'm guilty of. And my clients are like, "Yeah, just sign the deal." And I'm like, "But I think we can get more." I'm like, "Garrett, I don't care. I want the house. Don't lose this house over your ego." And I've had clients literally say that to me. They're like, "Just sign the counter. Send it over. We'll take it." I'm like, "But I think I can get it for less." And they're like, "No, I don't want to lose it over $5,000 or $15 a month. Just sign the offer." And so you have to remember, you're fighting for your client, not for your ego or your ability to win. Finally, give your offer the best chance. Don't be an asshole on the phone. That's the biggest one. We all have those agents who call and they say, "Well, in my 23 years, I've never seen this." Don't be that agent. I just closed 5 of these and I saw one, and it's like, nobody cares about you or your ego. Give your offer the best chance by taking yourself out of it. Thoughts on that? Anything we're missing? Am I boring you?
No.
Okay. All right. So, ask what the hell questions. Here's an example. I want to close in 60 days, so I want to close in 30 days. Mr. Seller, you're requesting a 30-day close. What's important about closing in 30 days? And so rather than saying like, how can we get to 30 days? Why does 30 days matter? Why is that important? If the client becomes defensive, we explain my goal is to solidify why this point's important to you. So can you tell me why it's important to you? It's not like that, but I want to clearly communicate this to the other side and tell them this is really important to you. Help me. Explain to me why 30 days is so important to you. What's happening in 30 days that was driving this deadline? So I want to represent your point of view then. So let's turn to page 11 really quick on your guide. Yeah. So read through page 12. We're not going to pick apart. We're just going to talk through this really quickly and be prepared to share your strategies. But will you guys read through this really quick and then we'll talk through it?
The scenario. The property is 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, is listed at $350,000. No, established.
Sorry, read yourself.
Oh, sorry.
Very fine. And actually, let's have you guys on the side of the room be buyer agents, you guys be listing agents. And I want to hear some of your tactics. Okay, so you guys do the listing agent side, you guys do the buyer agent side. You guys at home, pick a side, and I want to hear some tactics. All right, does everybody read their roles? Okay. So let's hear what you would pitch. Someone give me just a few points on the buy side. What would you pitch?
Say, we're putting an offer in, my buyers are pre-approved, they would have no problem getting, the closing table. And we are prepared to close the shortest time possible, so, this still is guaranteed to close with no issues. All we're asking for is, the appliances to be left. We're not gonna gripe about the carpeting or the garage door, we just want to get this to close and get my appliances to be able to.
And what would your purchase price be?
340.
So you want 340 on the appliances. And you're not gonna ask for carpet or garage. Listing agent, one of you guys, what would you say?
We came after, when we were raising the price was $2,000 buying young appliances at those.
So $2,000 higher?
For, because they're, they want the appliances for the daughter, but they're asking for the appliances, so we'll raise the price a little more so we can buy the appliances for the daughter.
Okay. So a higher price so they can buy new appliances. What do you say? Actually, let's-
Look, oh, me?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say, look, we are pre-approved and we are guaranteed to get your deal closed. I didn't read the listing agent role.
you don't need to.
Okay.
You're the buyer agent.
Okay. So we are pre-approved, we are ready to get this deal closed as soon as possible. We need the appliances, and we're not gonna give you're not gonna term because of loan or anything like that. We're not gonna grant about inspection. 340 is what we're offering, and we're ready to close.
So you're not budging.
No.
So what do you say?
I do have a couple more offers on the table, and I can talk to them and see if they're willing to pay a little more for the appliances.
I would say, are you willing to lose this deal over $2,000 when we are pre-approved and we're not pushing? How much is that garage door opener gonna cost you plus the new carpeting? I would say you're already gonna be, over budget. We're just asking for the appliances. So are you willing to lose the deal of $2,000?
Let me review, let me call the other agents and see what they have to offer. I'll contact you back.
Okay, great. Let's stop there. Let's hear some feedback. What do you guys think?
I feel like if I was the listing agent and I knew already that they wanted to design for their daughter, because they're currently in the home, right? I would have listed on the MLS that the applying to are not included.
Right.
That
That's what
way
they
it
did.
wasn't even an option for discussion.
I think they did. But sometimes you get agents who still will ask for
Or, I take the appliances out of the house. Like if my client's not there, if they're not living there and the appliances aren't there, you can't negotiate for something that's not there.
Yeah.
We're not gonna go out and buy you appliances.
them. Let's stick to the parameters of what they were talking about. And
Any feedback on this negotiation? Go ahead.
I think like being on the listing agent, like being a listing agent.
With the appliances, it says that they want to move soon but they're really firm on price. I think I would fight for the price and give the appliances just to make it, better for both, because their main goal is the price.
Okay. Any feedback on this side?
Try to negotiate, come to something.
Yeah. So I think that each of you would have to go back to your client and figure out, we talked about the BATNA. Have you guys heard that term other than me just saying it earlier?
What?
BATNA. And it's best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And so if you aren't going to negotiate an agreement right here, what's the best alternative to your client? What's their walkaway point, essentially? And so they may agree that they have to get 345 or 140. What's the price? 340. 140?
350.
Okay, sorry. So they may say, I have to get 345. I'm not going to take an offer less than that. And you can either agree to disclose that or not. But if an offer comes in at 340, asking for the appliances, that's an easy no. And I think you can say, look, that's just not going to get it done. And so I appreciate it, but save yourself some time, save us some time, and you don't need to write up that offer. I've absolutely said that to people before. Or we have 10 other offers on the table, or you have 2, and you say, I can tell you right now, it's not going to be competitive, so no need to write it. I mean, talk about negotiation power. When you say that to a buyer agent, they're like, oh, you don't even want to see our offer at this price? Like, that's a very clear message of, we're not negotiating, I just want it, And then it may be your walkaway point too, because you're at maybe at 340. And so understanding where those lines are and knowing your client's motivation and their walkaway point is huge. So I think you guys could have been a little bit more creative in throwing in other things, saying, we want to close quickly. So if you can close in 2 weeks, we'll give you it at that price if you can guarantee it. Earnest money has to be hard right now. Or, you can start pulling in other things that you want to negotiate. It doesn't have to stay on those 2 things. And that's where I want to encourage you guys to think outside the box. So if they want the appliances and they want that price, where else can you turn the screws that aren't even part of this? Can you get them to close in 2 weeks? Can you take everything off the table for inspection? Can you make half of earnest money hard on day one? Because you're harping on them being pre-approved. Great, if they're pre-approved, then the loan's basically done. So let's make half of earnest money hard right away. I know it's going to appraise. We're $10,000 less than the neighbor's house sold, and you're keeping the appliances. So yeah, let's make earnest money hard. Or this is where you get really creative.
So what would we do on the buyer side to negotiate more? Like that was all like listing negotiating power. What would we do for our buyers in this situation?
I think that was a buyer negotiation power to say, look, you could flip that and say, we are going to close in 2 weeks. And let us do our inspection by Wednesday. And after inspection, earnest money goes hard because our loan's already done. And we want the appliances and the 340 price. But in 2 weeks, you're done. You can move to Florida and, your daughter can buy your own appliances. Do you want to sell this house or do you want to play games? And so just finding other ways to make your offer stronger, because frankly, your offer at that point at 340 with keeping the appliances, it's not a great offer when they have multiple offers. And so you got to find other ways to sweeten the deal. All right, let's talk about counter tactics. So there's, yeah. So we're, instead of partnering on this, we're just going to talk through. Somebody read Nibbling. Anybody?
Once your client has agreed upon one major concession, the other party will start nibbling for additional smaller concessions.
Oh, yeah. Has anybody seen this? On page 13. So, nibbling. How would you stop that? Well, first let's talk about an example where you've seen that. Anybody? Has anybody seen any nibbling?
Yeah. Or like if they like they like the house and then they're like, we'll put in an offer, but it's kind of like what you said one time, was like, well, this back patio, and it was a nice back patio, this back patio needs some work done to it. And the downstairs doesn't have a bathroom, so they're just kind of like, being very nitpicky.
Yeah, absolutely. I also see this inspection, in inspection, when they say, hey, you guys are already fixing the sewer line. Could you just resod that area too? You're like, well, no. Or, hey, you're fixing the sewer line, but it needs cleanouts there too. Would you put in cleanouts? Or, things like where they're just continuing to add on. They're saying, look, you're already painting the main room. Could you also paint the kitchen in this color that I like? You already have the painters out, it needs it clearly. Or you had a water leak in the ceiling here, and you're already going to fix the ceiling. Could you just paint the whole room? And so it's just adding on little things. So how do you counteract that? What are some tactics? What would you say?
Listen, this is what we agreed upon, and this is all we're going to do.
Stress that you've already given in and given them what they asked for. Yeah, and now you're coming back for more. It's just what you want. What you just have to keep.
Yeah, go back to the initial motivation. I think the quickest way to nip this in the bud is to start nibbling on your end. And this happened, I'm selling my house right now, and the agent wrote that as his offer. And said, we're not gonna ask you to do anything, we're just gonna terminate if things are bad. Turns out a sewer line is shit. It's bad. And so we're fixing 2 spots in the sewer line, but that's a form of nibbling. First it was, well, I'm gonna fix that. And it was like, well, it looks like out here it needs fixed too. And while you're at it, why don't you blah, blah, blah. And I said, great, we'll do those if half of your earnest money is non-refundable. And I was, well, we shouldn't have to do that. And I said, look, you wrote an as-is offer. And now you're coming back and telling me that you want me to fix X, Y, and Z. You're going against the terms that you wrote in your contract, right? And so let's change the terms for me too. I'll do these things that you said you weren't gonna ask for, but if you terminate, I can keep your $5,000 of your $10,000 of earnest money. I got it. And she didn't ask for anything else. So I think the quickest way to counteract this is to start nibbling back and start asking for your own things. Like, yeah, we'll go ahead and resod the backyard if we raise the price by X amount, or if you agree that you're going to take it and no matter what the appraisal's at. Start taking other things off the table for them. Look, if I'm gonna put $5,000 out to resod the backyard, you're going to buy this if it doesn't appraise. And so let's, start swapping things. All right, next one, hot potato. Can somebody read that?
The other party tries to pass the problem on to you. For example, the co-op agent tries to pass all closing costs to your client because their client can't afford it.
Yeah, and we see this a lot where essentially their problem becomes your problem. Does anybody have an example of that? No. What about clients thought that they had enough in closing costs, or not in closing costs, but in down payment, or they just kind of like pay cut at work. And so now they don't qualify for the house. They tell you 2 days before closing on loan termination. And so we need to lower the price $10,000 because then my client can afford it again.
Can you say we're willing to offer like a 2-week extension for you to find a new loan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fun. What else?
I don't know, 2 weeks longer.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
But wouldn't they be reached at that point?
Not necessarily. I mean, let's say that it's loan termination and they just lost their job, or they're saying they lost their job, or they got a pay cut, or they have a kid who has asthma and there's too many stairs in the house, and so in order for their asthma medicine to be affordable, they want you to give them a price reduction. I mean, I've seen some crazy shit that people ask for. So how would you counteract that? Because a lot of times people will make their problems your problems.
That's not my problem.
Yeah. What does that have to do with me? I think Jen was onto it. You gotta dig deeper. You gotta say, well, you knew that the house upstairs when you wrote the offer, right? Or, you know, can I speak to his lender to talk a little bit? You don't even have to speak to the lender or ask their permission, but just say, let me call their lender on the one where you got the pay cut. And let me work out some ideas with them. Like, they get funds from a family member, a gift. Do they have a 401k that they could borrow some money from? Do they have other sources of income that you didn't take into account? And so the big one on hot potato is dig in deeper, because it doesn't have to be your problem. A lot of times people will make it your problem or try to, but you're going to be able to counteract that by digging deeper. All right, somebody read the good guy, bad guy.
Two people working together, e.g. a husband and a wife, will take on opposing roles. One appears friendly and considerate while the other behaves in a difficult or aggressive manner. Think of the typical car salesperson, good guy who says his manager, bad guy, won't let him reduce the price any further.
Yeah. Does anybody see this very often? Sometimes I do this on our team, or we've got a buyer agent and they're getting the runaround from the other agent. I'll call the other agent and be an ass, frankly, and I'll make it difficult on them. And I'll just be someone that they don't want to deal with and someone that is just unreasonable. And that way, when they go back to my buyer agent, they're like, all right, let's talk, let's negotiate. And I had an agent recently tell one of my buyer agents, your boss is an ass. Like, he's just a jerk. And I'm like, good. Now they want to work with you and they want to be more reasonable with you because they don't want to deal with me. That absolutely happens. I will use good guy, bad guy all the time when I am dealing with my client and the other side. And I'll say, hey, Mr. Listing Agent, I know that you said X, Y, and Z, but my buyer's being unreasonable. And I apologize. Help me understand why you don't want to do X, Y, and Z. Or can we get anything out of you? Otherwise, I think my buyer might walk. They're being unreasonable. And I know they're being unreasonable, and you know they're being unreasonable, but let's keep this together. How can we, as a team, keep this together? But my buyer may or may not be unreasonable. It doesn't matter. But I'm making them be the bad guy and saying, hey, let's you and I partner up. Let's be a team. Let's work together to make this happen. But in the same way, I'll do this to my buyer and I'll say, Jesus, the seller is being terrible. They're being so unreasonable. Let's figure out what your walkaway point is. Or let's figure out if we, like, I don't know if we can get anything out of them. And I will make the other side, the bad guy, in their imagination, whether they're being unreasonable or not. And so I will play with good guy, bad guy. And I'm always the good guy. The other person I'm talking about is always the bad guy. And it just makes that negotiation a little easier.
I mean, what's your response if the other agent really is the bad guy? Like,
it's no different. I don't have to pretend. I'm just being like, yeah, this guy's an asshole. They're not going to do anything. What do you want to do here? And that's where your BATNA comes in. That's where your walkaway point is. Like, look, are you willing to take this house knowing that it needs new furnace or a new roof? Like, well, let's go back to your original motivation of, is this the neighborhood you want? Is it the schools that you want? Is it the house that you want? Or are you just sick of looking at houses? Do you want to go spend another 5 months trying to find the perfect house while prices rise? Or do you just want to buy this one and fix it up? But how do you counteract the good guy, bad guy? If you see it coming, you know what's happening, and you're talking to a husband and wife or someone blaming the other person, how do you counteract it?
With the clients that I work with and organizing, if I'm a good guy, like the wife always deflects, oh, it's the husband. At some point I catch on and I start going right to the husband. So that way there's none of this there's no room for this blame on someone else kind of thing. I go right to the source of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's key. So call them on it. Feel free to say, it feels like a little bit of a good guy, bad guy situation. If you guys aren't in agreement, can I speak with a decision maker? Or why don't you two go back and talk and figure out what you actually want to do? So I'm getting two stories here. And then let's actually have a conversation. Because you're telling me that they'll do it, you're telling me that they won't. So it seems like you guys need to decide where you're at. So I think that's the easiest way to counteract that. All right, let's move on. We're not going to do too much real play here, because I do want to talk about positioning, and unfortunately they don't really talk. I mean, that is positioning right there. So let me go back to that. Yeah, so the 3 P's: reviewing our prepare, present, position. And positioning are those counter tactics. But I want to talk briefly just about how you frame your conversation and knowing what's important. And we've got about 15 more minutes. We'll get a little bit early, but rather than doing this last role play, let's just talk about what you are negotiating, what it looks like, and what your frame looks like, and how to have these conversations. You guys okay with that? And a lot of this is out of anything. But they talk about barriers that people throw up in their head when you start negotiating with them, and how to get around those barriers, and how to kind of have a conversation with people. And so I want to review a little bit. And I want to talk about how to prepare for these. Preparing is so key. And when you're in the contract, you got to know what every piece means. We talked about that. I'll give you a classic example. On our appraisal language, we had a buyer who wanted to write on a condo. And for some reason, this one condo that was listed at like 375, and it got up to almost 435 or 445. The comps in the place were all at 375. We knew it was going to appraise at 375. And so we wrote an offer. He had a cash offer at, I think, 425 at that point. So they knew they were going to get 425. We wrote an offer at 435. And we said buyer to pay, like in the event of a low appraisal, buyer to pay $10,000 over appraised value. The listing agent just took that as, oh, great. So we'll pay, they'll make up the first $10,000 on a low appraisal, and then we can negotiate, right? That's usually how these work. What we wrote though was buyer to pay. We knew it wasn't going to appraise. It appraised at 375, and we were locked in at 385. And the seller said, oh, well, we've got a cash offer at 425. We're just going to go with them. I said, I need you to go back and read the contract, because we already negotiated this. And we negotiated it when you signed the contract, buyer to pay. Not buyer can pay, or buyer is willing to pay, or buyer will make up the difference up to that point, and then it's going to be blah, blah, blah. After that, it just says buyer to pay. You agreed to it. Our new price, and we've done this multiple times, our new price is 385. I'm sorry that you had a 425 cash offer. We're under contract at 385. And we've had multiple lawyers look this over. We've gone round and round on these things. What I did there was I negotiated it up front. And so negotiation doesn't always happen when you hit a wall. And this is why preparing and knowing your contracts is so key. Do you guys have questions about that? Does that make sense for just the general example of, and maybe not the tactics of how it all played out, but knowing your contract and knowing what's in additional provisions can bite you, or it can be your best friend.
That's the increase.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, but same thing we had a inspection objection where they asked us to fix 15 things on the roof, and it was a new roof. And we wrote on the resolution, seller to ensure the roof is not leaking. And the buyer's agent didn't catch it. She thought that we were giving them everything they wanted on the roof, and we were fixing this angle, and we were putting in that, and blah, blah, blah. She saw that we were doing something with the roof on the resolution, and she signed it. When they took possession of the house, we hadn't touched the roof. We didn't do anything. And she threatened a lawsuit. She said, well, I asked for this, and you said that you're going to fix the roof. And I said, no, go back and read the resolution. Seller to ensure that the roof is not leaking. I said, can you show me where it leaks? She said, no, but it's installed properly, and there's a weird angle there, and we asked for that, and you said you're going to fix the roof. And I said, you never said we were going to fix anything. So we were going to ensure it wasn't leaking. And she brought in her attorney, and everything had to be over email. And I said, here are the documents. Tell me where we said we were going to fix the roof. And so a lot of this negotiation stuff can get taken care of prior to the actual negotiation if you write your contracts correctly and if you pay attention to what's on them. On the inverse side, you may not get the chance to negotiate if you miss something on your contract. So prepare is key. The other part of preparing is knowing what the other side is going to come back at. So you got to play these scenarios out in your head. Going back to what we were talking about with the role play of the buyer agent and the listing agent. If you go in and you say, here's what we're offering, their answer is going to be no, unless you can sweeten the deal with something. So knowing what their counter is going to be and preparing that information.
When you write something like showers and chairs done, if the buyer agent had actually read it correctly and realized you weren't actually doing what they asked, then they can counter you at that point.
They can just not sign the inspection resolution. They can say, that's not what we asked for, we really want you to fix the roof. Absolutely, yeah.
So that was just in case if you're not paying attention to what.
Yeah, that was for not preparing when we were negotiating. Right, and I've seen this on times where agents have screwed up and the agent has to pay for it. Again, this is a bit off script, but there's all kinds of false flags that get thrown up when you're negotiating. Like, oh, well, we can't fix the sewer line because we're closing in 2 weeks. And you say, if I can find someone to come out and fix it the next 2 weeks, would you be okay with that? And so digging in a little bit deeper, or, they don't have any money to fix the sewer line. Well, if I find someone who can do the repair and get paid out of proceeds, would you be open to that? Because they're going to have plenty of money then when the house closes. And you'll see this with your clients, you'll see this with the other agent. They're going to throw up objections. And those objections may or may not be valid. And so digging into the why, and digging in deeper is where you're going to win in negotiations. And then shutting up. Like, what's so important about that? Or would you rather continue to have this house on the market for another month or take an offer today? Like, what are the costs associated with keeping this house versus taking our low offer today? And then shut up. Ask deeper questions, shut up. And if they're just giving you 1 or 2 word answers, say the 1 or 2 words back to them again. Let's talk about ahas. What did you guys get out of this? What do you feel like was important that you learned? Shut up. That's the most powerful negotiation tactic out there. I swear. Just shutting up. And you'll hear people start to negotiate against themselves, which is beautiful. They'll say, look, my client's not willing to take less than 350, and you say less than 350. Just got really awkward, right? And the agent's gonna be like, well, they might be able to do 345. And you didn't do anything. You didn't say anything. They're already negotiating against themselves. You say, look, I think I can get this signed today at 340. And they're like, send it over, let me see what I can do. So yeah, shut up. What else?
Read everything, remember your goal, and shut up.
Yeah, read everything, remember your goal. Understanding what you're negotiating. Like which piece you're negotiating, because it's constantly changing.
Prepare yourself.
Prepare yourself. It's huge. And just knowing some tactics of, look, you've got a broken sewer line. What's the seller going to do to go back on the market? And it's been under contract for 2 weeks. Everybody knows that there's something wrong with the house now, and you have to disclose there's a $10,000 sewer repair that your seller's not willing to do. You can go back on the market, get a higher price than you did the first weekend, and get someone who's not going to take this or take it as is, knowing that there's $10,000 sewer repair. Shut up. What else? That's all you guys got? Anybody at home have any ahas?
Like knowing when to stop.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Knowing when to stop, having your bat up, knowing where your walkway point is. Because I think that we always say when we're on the buy side, let's kick this can as far down the road as we can when we know there's an issue. Because when you're 2 days from closing, the seller's a lot more likely to negotiate on a big item than they are on day one of under contract, right? Because they want to go back on the market 29 days in, 28 days in, and that's why you get those agents to say, oh yeah, seller lost their job yesterday, we're not closing unless you lower the price $10,000. Or I've heard people just say, seller decided they don't like the house anymore. They're gonna terminate it unless you lower the price by $10,000. You're like, what? Well, this is how you negotiate. But they're right. Once you get closer to closing, it's harder to walk away. So knowing when to negotiate is huge. We'll have, a lot of times we will, if someone doesn't have closing costs, we'll raise the price $5,000 and then write closing costs in as $5,000 max. They're financing their closing costs. We don't do that when we write the initial offer. We get it under contract clean and clear. And then we say, look, we want a $5,000 credit. We're going to write in, increase the purchase price by $5,000 and give them a credit. And it makes for more paperwork. But when you don't do that up front, you have a better chance of getting your client in the house. So has anything changed? How do you guys think about negotiation? I think the way that I encourage you guys to think about negotiation is stop taking things at face value. I talked to a guy the other day who was like, every time I go to McDonald's, I ask for extra fries or a larger fry. Instead, I get it by half the time. What? That's the thing? He's like, yeah, I just say, hey, when he gets to the window in the drive-thru or when they're pulling out his order, he said, oh, I forgot, can I just get an extra fry? And what do those people care? They're slinging fries all day. They're like, yeah, sure, here you go. They're thinking outside the box. I mean, every time that I hear a rule, this probably isn't healthy, but every time someone tells me, you can't do that. Why? Why is that a rule? And oftentimes they're like, I don't know, it's just a rule. But what would happen if you change that rule for me? The world gonna die?
Sounds like my daughter.
Right?
9-year-old.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of kids, is that they haven't been properly like beaten into place. And so they question things. They're like, that doesn't make sense. Why is that a rule? Why is that something I gotta do? I can't tell you, I can't do that at 10 o'clock.
Kind of the beauty of this industry as well, or not even this industry, but just creating your own, no matter what you do, creating your own business, creating your own situations. It gives you that freedom to, you work that 9 to 5, you work your corporate job, all that. You have all those rules and all those things, and you just do them because that's the way it is, and that's the way, everybody before you did it, and everybody after you's gonna do it. It's like, yeah, you can kind of make those own decisions, your own decisions, and question those things. Why is it this way? Would it be different if it was this way? Would it, better, is it worse?
Yeah. Question it. Do you guys think you're a lot different now? Going around doing other things or negotiating or not taking things at face value? And I know I said not to do this, but when someone says the TV and the wall mount are excluded in the sale, call the agent and say, what's so important about that TV? My client's like it. Did you leave it? Is that going to be a deal breaker for your seller? They might say yes. And if they have no offers on the table, obviously don't do this in a multiple offer situation, but if they have no offers on the table, you might have just got your client a free TV or a hot tub or whatever. The last thing that I want to talk about really quickly, and it's a little bit of a pitch for this book, pitch anything, is they talk about framing in here. And they talk about, they're almost like false flag frames, but there's the time frame. If you ever walked into a listing appointment, they're like, I've only got 15 minutes. So let's get this done. That is a way of them to control the negotiation. They call it frame and control in here. And if you can turn that frame and say, great, I've only got 10, like, let's get this done right now. That takes the wind out of their sails. Another one is the moral authority. I'm doing what's right here, and you're just trying to do whatever. I'm trying to say that they are correct and right, and you're not. Question it. Push back a little bit. There's they talk about all kinds of framing here. Let's see if I can get the list really quick.
What would you say though, if they're one sure do what's right?
I think that you talk about, well, who says that that's right? Like you're trying to do what's right for your client, I'm trying to do what's right for my client. You're not right with a big, like capital letter, right? But there's the time constraint frame we talked about, there's the intrigue frame, where you keep people guessing and you want them coming back for more information. The prize frame is probably my favorite one, because of what are we selling here? Houses, dreams. I'm gonna argue that all of you are wrong. We're selling ourselves, right? They can buy houses from anybody. They can buy houses online without ever using an agent. We're selling ourselves, our service. Make yourself the prize when you're going into negotiation. I know a guy who says, look, I only work with 3 buyers at a time. I've got 2 on the line and I'm talking to a few others. I want to always deliver phenomenal customer service. I can't do that if I work, and he says 7, but if I work with more than 4 people, let's say. And so I'm talking to a few people like I'm talking to you. I've got 3 going. If you want to sign the contract with me today, we can get going. But if it's going to take you a little while, let's just have you wait, and I'll work with a couple of these other people. And then when I have an opening, I'll reach back out to you and we can get going on your home search. If you're that buyer, what do you want to do that day? Yeah, right? I just completely flipped it on you and you're like, I don't think I want to commit to or sign a contract. I'm like, great, because I'm too busy and I want to deliver phenomenal customer service. Things will probably slow down around Christmas. Want to search for a house with me around Christmas? God, no. Nobody wants to look for a house on Christmas. And he gets buyer agency signed every time because he's made himself a prize. He says there's more demand for me than there is supply of me. So if you want to work with me, either sign up today or you can go on the waiting list. So understanding these frames and how to kind of break them is pretty important in negotiation. We don't have enough time to cover it all. Read pitch anything, read never split the difference, and read go for no. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last time I know if you're awesome, you're off.
We've got a lot of books.
What?
So we've got a lot of books.
Thanks, guys.
I have a funny story. I was meeting a friend for lunch and there was an empty parking space right next to me. And they were around the block. So I went and stood in the